How about a little history lesson today? Uh, it's hard to believe, but I was born in the 30s, the 1930s, that is, believe it or not. And things have changed in my lifetime. Before the age of technology and microchips and everything that we have now. In fact, even before the age of television. Yeah, well, I can remember getting our first television, but before that was the era of radio and old Victrolas and crystal sets and things like that. And that's what you're looking at right now on this screen. This old radio was very similar to the one that we had, and I can remember when I was about as tall as this radio is, and I can remember playing with the knobs on the radio and getting hollered at. And at night we used to turn this on and listen to the nightly news and different things. And I can remember some of the old radio shows, Inner Sanctum, Mr. and Mrs. North, The Shadow. It used to start out, Only the Shadow Knows. And then I can remember it was right after the war, I believe it was, that we had everything was rationed. I remembered gas. You had to have stamps to get gas, and sugar was in very short demand. We look at the era we're living in right now, and with this coronavirus going around, the shelves in a lot of the stores are empty. Well, that's the way it was back when I was a kid, when we went through hard times. And I can remember my dad picking up an old Victrola that looked something very similar to this one. And I remember the only way we had to haul it was in a coaster wagon. I had one of those red Ryder coaster wagons when I was a kid, and we went down to the neighbor's house where we bought it, and we laid it down on the coaster wagon. And I remember I had to balance it as we walked home with it and drug it home. And I could remember all the old records that came with it. A lot of them were the old Caruso records, and they were these 78s, they call them. They had 78s and 33s, then the smaller ones came along, 45s. This was even before the era of tapes, before 8-tracks and cassette tapes and all this stuff. So the vinyl was the big thing. And in fact, there are still people collecting vinyl and buying fancy turntables and still playing them to try to get the good sound. And but I can remember when I was a kid, I went to Boys Tech High School in Milwaukee, and it was a trade school, and we learned different trades. And one thing I can remember making when I was in my junior high was a crystal set. It looked something very similar to this, except I did have a speaker on my board, and so at night I would lay under my covers in bed with a flashlight and play around with my crystal set that I made. And I could pick up stations, and I'd listen to some music and also some old radio programs that I could find on it. That's when my mom and dad thought I was in bed sleeping, I was playing around with this crystal set. Well, anyway, as time went on, though, I could remember wanting to get into computers and stuff like that. Later on in life, I did, but I still look back at this era that I was raised in, when kids didn't have electronics to play with. We went outside and played, and on a hot summer night, our parents would be sitting on the porch of our home. And we would be running around the neighborhood playing kick the can and hide and seek and ollie ollie and all these games that we used to play. Well, those years are gone, but it was all part of our history and all part of our growing up, and especially in the inner cities. I thought I'd just share this with you this morning and just give you a little history of what it was like when I was a kid. A little different than today. Hope you enjoyed this.